if you've spent any length of time programming, then I'm pretty sure that you already know what recursive functions are, and therefore by extension, fractal patterns. Today we'll look at Julia and Mandelbrot sets, which are a very neat way to create fractals using very simple functions. All right, Ravi, I think we're going to be on in 3, 2, 1. So how's it going, man, Ravi? So today we'll do the Mandelbrot set. Excellent. And you had so many questions on the Mandelbrot set, right? So I have, and I know I have been teasing this Mandelbrot set to you for such a long time, since I think last December that we'll go through this, but I've never actually gotten around to showing this to you. So I have a lesson plan and everything today. Let's see. So all right. So so I think that's code control 4. All right. So I have this set and pixel patterns. I mean, I just want to give an introduction to sets and pixel patterns, and then the very famous z plus 1 is equal to the z square plus 1c, z square plus c function. And we'll see what happens when we plug this function into Excel or Libre or the Calc. All right. And I have a 1D demonstration of this function. All right. We've always seen the Mandelbrot set and the Julia sets in 2 dimensions. We'll look at it in 1 dimension, and then we'll scale it up to the 2 dimensions. All right. And just so that everyone is aware of what we are talking about, let's have a look at what the Mandelbrot set will actually look like. Okay. I'm just going to open the Wikipedia page. All right. So this is what the Mandelbrot set will look like. This is the famous Mandelbrot set brought on by that very famous function where f of z plus 1 is equal to z square plus c. But we are actually going to start off with Julia sets. All right. And so this is a Julia set. There are many Julia sets. Each for every value of c that we saw in that formula, it'll produce like different patterns and all of those things. The Mandelbrot set and the Julia sets are actually connected, and how they are connected is the Julia sets are actually part of the Mandelbrot sets. There are certain values of C within the Mandelbrot set that will produce the Julia sets. The programming for them is actually the same, right? I mean, it's just a very simple modification produces the Mandelbrot set instead of the Julia set. We'll look at that also. So I think Julia sets are like, we'll start off with Julia sets essentially. All right. So I'll just go back to the Excel. All right. And let's look at some very, let's look at what a set is. Do you know what a mathematical set is? Very simple to define, right? So I have, I actually have, so let me just expand this a little bit. All right. A set is what, man? Even numbers can be a set, odd numbers can be a set, prime numbers can be a set. A set is anything that you can, anything that satisfies a particular function. Condition. All right. A function or a condition. Let's take this function for example. All right. And you can make up these rules arbitrarily. Even though this function doesn't by itself say anything, I can say things like this function should satisfy a specific value. So in this case, this function n should satisfy this function n mod c, where this should return a 0 to me. Basically, n mod c means there should be no remainder out of this. Now let's assume that this grid that I have painted here, all right, let me bring it back to 100%. This grid that I have put in a canvas over here is n, and each one is n plus 1, n plus 2, and n plus 3, and all of those things. What happens if I select n as 1? Everything is selected over everything here. Is divisible. Everything is divisible by 1. So that's n equal to 1. N equal to 2 produces a checkerboard pattern. N equal to 3 produces this thing, and so on and so forth. This is easy to understand, right? So I just wanted to show, what happens if let's say I have a canvas or I have some sort of graphical device and I want to highlight some pixels on it based on a specific function. It produces these beautiful patterns. These patterns, correct. So that's what I wanted to show with this one. And let's take it up just a notch above and let's look at this function. Z plus 1 is equal to z square plus c. All right. And I have this really neat calculator thing going on over here. Okay. So z, I have a value z which will keep on changing, and I have a fixed value C. All right, so this value remains
constant.
C. All right, and what I'm going to determine is if I keep on iterating through that formula, f of z plus 1 is equal to z square plus c. If I keep on iterating through this, at the end of that iteration, let's say I iterated for in the sheet I have iterated it 24 times. The question I'm asking is, if I keep on iterating z square plus c for 24 times, will it remain bounded? What do you mean bound? Which means you know what bound is. It means it will remain within a very specific value. What that specific value is, once again, it's arbitrary. We can decide if it is bounded or unbounded. In this case, I'm just saying, if you look at the formula, I'm just saying if it has not gone above 1000, it means it has remained bounded. All right. And I have this very helpful graph also showing that shows essentially that it will remain bound. But let's say what happens if I change, let's say z, for example. Right, I'll change it to 0.27. Once again, it remains bounded. What about 1.5? And once again, it remains bounded. But that's fine. Let's say if I take it to 2, once again, it does it remain bounded?
No, it does not.
No, actually,
was also unbounded, right?
Yeah. Did I change this data? All right, doesn't matter. Okay, let's say, oh, wait a minute. Did that go unbounded?
Yeah,
why didn't this change?
Yeah, why didn't the graph change?
I'm not sure. But let's look at it. Maybe something went off. Did the graph change? Let me just take a look at the data for this graph. Oh yeah, no, it is over here.
But if you do 1.5, it was showing the same. Z is equal to 1 or 2, whatever.
So if I do this, you will see that these
numbers are changing, but the graph is not.
But the graph is not. This has definitely gone unbounded. 0.27.
It's gone unbounded, yeah.
Oh, what happens if I change this to 0? All right, it doesn't matter. I can draw this chart again. I'm going to insert the chart again.
Yeah.
And it's just a line chart. It's nothing very complicated.
Okay.
I need lines. Finish. Oh, I forgot to specify where the data is for this. And I can say data ranges.
Yeah. Right. Okay. It's quickly gone below.
Yeah, of course,
unbounded.
yeah, exactly. It's very quickly gone unbounded. So I'm just going to expand this just a little bit. And I'm going to remove these labels because we don't need them. Show labels.
Becomes a very small number
very fast. Yeah. That's a very small number. Let's see. I make this 0.2. All right. For some reason, Excel has decided to show up nothing right now. Right. But at the end of the day, you are able to see what I'm trying to say, right? So this has remained. So this has remained bounded.
Right.
Because it has not. This has remained bounded.
Oh, okay.
Because you can see that the exponential is minus 179.
Okay.
Which means it's becoming very small. So
very
let's say,
small.
very
right.
small.
Yes.
This is also once again very small.
Right.
So let's say I make this 0.5. Once again, it remains bounded. 1. Now it has exceeded up.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So this needs to be, let's say, 0.8. Once again, it's unbounded.
Oh.
Yeah. What about 0.5? All right. So I have this. All right. So what? So what is the meaning of this? It still doesn't make sense, bound and unbounded. But I just wanted to show you what happens if you run this formula on Excel.
Okay.
I just wanted to show you what happens if you remain bound and unbounded and all of those things.
Right.
But let's take a look at this same thing and let's put it onto. Do I have the one-dimensional thing going on? Yeah. So this is the same thing on 1 dimensions. All right. So here is what is happening. This is the value of C that I'm showing here. This is clear, right? Okay.
Right.
This is the value of C. Okay. And I can the C is represented by the red line over here.
Okay.
And this whole chart is basically a one-dimensional line, which which basically represents on a graph values between -2 and +2. Now let's see what happens if I shift C. All right. That's the value of C, and it's now 0 point, and you can see that. So all of these values that you see over here, those blue things that you see,
range.
those are ranges of Z starting from -2 to 2 that will remain bounded if I apply the same formula n number of times. If I run it through, let's say, in this case, I'm running through 50 iterations. If I run it through 50 iterations, those blue areas are areas where the values will remain bounded.
Okay.
That's what you are seeing right now. So if I now, let's say, take it to negative, you can see that more and more values of Z, along the line remain bounded. So those blue areas are essentially, marked like that. So, but if I go above a specific value, you can see that there are no values where Z remains, where that formula doesn't result in a bounded value. Only above 0.2, 0.36, you have some bounded values and all of those things. I'm pretty sure that still does not there is still a lot of things to be explained.
Correct.
Now I saw this very beautiful video on Numberphile where they had an applet, I think, and I did the same applet over here also, and I have this one. Now this is the exact same thing that you saw, but now in 2 dimensions. How did I suddenly say 2 dimensions? Why did this 2 dimension come up? Now let's look at the formula once again for what Z square plus C actually means. Hold on, let me go back to the Mandelbrot set. All right. You will see that the Mandelbrot set is a set of complex numbers. Both the Z and the C actually represent complex numbers. A complex number goes by the form a plus bi, where I is actually a square root of -1, I think. All right. So let's take complex numbers, for example. Let's look at the definition. A complex number is a number that can be expressed in the form a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers, and I represents an imaginary unit satisfying the equation where I is essentially square root of -1. All right, it's an imaginary number. Do we have to worry about what imaginary numbers are in this case? No, it just means we are taking it up another notch.
Okay.
Right? Basically, that one-dimensional set that we saw, it was on one line. I'm just saying let's take it in 2 dimensions. That's all. All right. In this case, all right, C is represented by the red dot over here, and it is currently at 0.0 plus 0. Basically the x and y values is what is defined over here, and Z is wherever I keep my mouse. All right. Now, stop me if I don't make any sense. All right. So what happens over here is that these green dots over here represent the iterations of the formula Z square plus C. They represent the iterations. All right. So for where C is equal to 0, you can see that as long as I remain within value 1, it remains unbounded. It remains bounded. But as soon as I exceed 1, it remains unbounded, and there are no values. There are no values that remain bounded. But as soon as I put it over here, it remains bounded to that 0. Which means if I apply this formula to the values of C and Z here, they will all tend to this one. All right. Now you might be wondering what these blue dots are. All of these blue dots essentially represent all the spots where the values will remain bound. And that's essentially what the Julia set is. Now what happens if I move C? If I move C, you will see that different patterns emerge. And some of these patterns will look vaguely familiar because you would have already seen them as part of Julia sets. Right? So for over here, for example, let me just take the mouse out. Oh, no. Let me make it. Over here, for example. Right? So if I keep my mouse on one of these white spaces, it is unbounded. It has not. It is unbounded. But if I keep it on these blue spaces, you will see that it remains. It is bounded. I mean, it doesn't mean it binds to a specific value. It just binds arbitrarily to somewhere, but it remains bound within that area. This is what we'll be doing as part of the coding thing today. So I just wanted to basically code this up, and I wanted to show you some beautiful Julia sets and show you what it looks like. All right. So to do this, I already have the HTML page set up. I mean, last week I think we spent a lot of time setting up the HTML itself. It's just the basic. It's the exact same HTML that you saw the other day. All right. Let me just show you what the HTML page looks like. This is what it looks like right now. I mean.
And perhaps we'll just put it up on GitHub so that
yes. So last week's code is also on GitHub. If anybody wants to take a look.
Yes.
Last week's code is also on GitHub. This week's code will also be on GitHub. And also, by the way, starting this week, I'm also creating supplementary videos where functions that cannot be discussed over here, that are out of scope for this video, are discussed separately. Functions or utilities or something. But today we'll be using something called as a map function, for which there is a supplementary, and we'll provide a link for that within the video itself. All right, that being said, let's start. So I have the index.html, I have a canvas, I'm calling it the set canvas. I have the JS file, I have an init function where it is already being called on the onload of this thing. Once again, you're not using any frameworks, because when you use frameworks, you're bounded to a specific version. If somebody is looking at this 10 years from now, JavaScript will remain JavaScript, but the framework would already be out of date and it would be old and everything. So therefore, we are not doing this without we are doing this without any frameworks. Just vanilla JavaScript. All right. So I have the init function where I have the canvas element, the context. I have the context also defined in all of those things. Now remember, let's look at the set demonstration that we saw. These values that you see, basically they'll have to be within -2 and +2.
Okay.
All right. So those are the minimum and maximum values for which Julia sets need to be evaluated. So let's just create those constants where minimum C is equal to, const minimum C is equal to -2. I'm not all there today. So max C is equal to 2. All right. We would also need a C value, right? So variable C is equal to what? Okay. So basically C is an X and Y coordinate. So we'll have to say Cx is equal to, let's put it at 0 for now. All right. Just to start with. So this is a variable, not a constant. So, right? I mean, because these values would keep on changing. Now I'm going to create a function, and I'll just call it draw set. I'm not calling it draw Julia set or draw Mandelbrot set, because we'll use the same function to draw both of them. And at the end of drawing this Julia set, I'll just show you the very minor difference between the both. All right. So I have the draw set. So I have the init function, I have the context. Now, what I want to do is run through all of the pixels on the canvas. I mean, basically we'll be doing some pixel manipulation over here. All of the pixels of the canvas, and we'll evaluate it for that specific pixel. That pixel becomes the Z value. Now, if that pixel belongs to the set, if it remains bounded in that set, I mean, if we run through the iterations and if it remains bounded, then we'll highlight that pixel, or else we will not highlight that pixel. Simple as that. All right. So I have this. I have the draw set. All right. So how do I run through all of the pixels? Very easy. I can say where x is equal to 0, x less than width, x plus. So all the pixels on the x-axis for variable y is equal to 0, y less than height, y plus. This is all the pixels on the y. So now if I run through this loop, it's basically a 2-dimensional array of all of this. Oh, I have this. Oh, hold on. Before we go there, we need to actually initialize or get the pixels that we are going to use. And we can do that with pixel manipulation on the canvas. So I need to declare a variable called image data. All right. And pixel data. Now to get the pixel, to essentially get pixels from the canvas, I'll say image data is equal to canvas context dot create image data. I think it's called create image data, and I can say, all right. So this is creating like an empty pixel data. Now the pixel data itself, I can get it through by doing image data dot data. So this will give me all of the pixels within the image that I have created. Ultimately, if I can just modify this pixel data and I can set it back to the context.
Right.
Now one thing about the pixel data, let me go back to Excel and I can show you what I mean by that. So let's say I have a pixel. So let's say I have this pixel. All right, I'm going to highlight it in some, give me a darker color. All right, so I have this pixel. Each pixel essentially has 4 elements in it. Each one of those pixel data has 4 elements in it, and each one of those represents a specific color. This is red, green, blue, and then alpha. So if I was to create a pixel data of 1000 width and 800 height, this is a huge amount of pixels already. This is what, 800,000 pixels by itself is huge, but then the pixel data is 800,000 into 4, which is 3.2 million pixels that we'll have to evaluate.
Right.
That by itself is a huge number of pixels we'll have to do. And 4 of those pixel data is 4 of those pixel data essentially represents one pixel having the color elements and all of those things. So that's a lot of manipulation. Another thing we need to remember is that the pixel data is a single dimensional array.
Right.
It is not a 2-dimensional array. It's a single dimensional array. So these coordinates we'll have to change it back to pixel data.
Got it.
But that's fine. I mean, it's a very simple math that we'll have to do. All right. So let's get so I have this and I have this. Okay. Now remember, I will have to I'll have to map the x and y to z values. So basically z values. I'll have to do z values. Why?
Okay.
Because it is z square plus c, where c remains a constant. I have declared the constant values over here. Now I need the z values.
Okay.
All right. Now, but the z values, both the c and the z values, we will say that they'll remain between -2 and +2.
Got it.
If you want them to make it, plus 100 and minus 100, that's up to you. When you actually code it up, try it and tell me what happens, or leave it in the comments as to what happens and everything.
Right.
But right now, just to make sure that it appears very large on the screen, I'm going to map it to -2 and +2. Okay. But hold on, what is this mapping that I'm talking about? I have a map function that I'm going to take from one of my other sources. This is the map function for which we have created a supplementary video, and that supplementary video, I'll link it within this video itself. So I'm just going to copy this map function and put it in my, but essentially what it does is it takes an input value and maps it to an output value. So let's see. So I'll say where ZA, or I'll call it ZX, is equal to map x value to 0 comma with map it to -2 and 2. Does that make sense? Yep. Yeah. All right. And I'll do the same thing with ZY. All right. Where y is mapped to height, once again to a value between z and okay. And now we will do the iteration function. So for where on is it okay, where n equal to 0, n less than, let's create a constant called max iterations. And I'll say go 100 iterations for now.
Yeah.
Typically, whenever you're talking about Julia sets or Mandelbrot sets, they'll go up to 1,000. And the more you want to zoom on into those fractals, the more number of iterations you'll have to run.
Right.
But for the sake of conserving, whatever processing power we have, I'm going to start off with 100.
Right.
Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
All right. And n plus plus. Whoop, what's that? Okay. So I have this, and now we do the z square plus c. And now we have the so how do we do z square plus c on two-dimensional things? Remember the famous a plus b the whole square formula? Yeah. Oh, what is a square? A plus b the whole square? It's
A square
yeah,
plus
it's
B
a square plus b square plus 2ab. That's what we are going to do right now.
Oh,
So yeah, so we'll say variable. I'll call it zxx is equal to zx into z. Oh, okay. Variable zyy is equal to, I'm just arbitrarily choosing names here, is equal to 2 into I don't need these braces, into zx 2 yeah, it is, yeah, into zy. Okay, so I have yeah, so basically a square plus b square has happened over here. A square goes into the a component and 2ab goes into the b component, or
oh.
yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so now
What happened to b square then?
yeah, a square plus b square.
Okay.
Is it zx plus zy plus zy into, yeah, I think so. Hold on, I'm trying to think about this. It is a square. Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm just going to look this
Yeah.
up.
Shall we look this up?
Yeah, I think it is these.
Squaring complex numbers. Is that what we need to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Magnitude square, like which is what you have done.
Yeah, so I think zxx is zx into zx.
Because I square becomes -1.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just looking it up.
Okay.
Square plus squaring. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is zx into it is a square plus 2ab minus b square.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a minus b the whole square.
Oh, it's a minus
A
b
minus b the whole square.
because it's square root of minus.
Yeah,
b.
so
Okay.
therefore it is zy into zy.
Square.
Yeah.
Right. A square minus
Yeah, it is like
Yes.
this. Yeah,
This
this
is
is the
like-
one. Yeah.
This
This is the one. Yeah. So now we have this one. And now if I can say, if you can say math.abs, if zxx plus zyy exceeds a specific amount, I mean, let's say, what is this? Exceeds an arbitrary amount.
Right.
I know that if it exceeds, let's say 16, for example, then it will remain unbounded and I can
Right.
just simply break out of this loop.
Okay.
Alright, this 16, once again, let's declare it as let's say 16, so that we can just change it in one place and it changes everywhere.
Right.
So if it becomes greater than this, then I'll break it. I mean, I don't have to do anything more. But now remember, I'll have to do the z square plus. I'll have to do the z square plus c. So essentially, once again, zxx. No, not zxx. So which is a, right? Yeah. So zx is equal to zxx
Right.
plus cx, right? I mean, we have a cx over there.
Right.
And the same thing with y also.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so this is the z square plus c, where I'm adding the constant over here, and the cx and the cy we've like added it over here. All right. So I have these. Now, if Now, if n reaches max iterations, which means it is bounded, if it is not reached max iterations, if it has broken out of here, it will be less than max iteration. So, and if it is equal to, it will just be equal to. So, if n equals max iteration, right? I can maybe I can just assign a, let's say, I'll say brightness equal to 0. And if it reaches this thing, I'll say brightness is equal to 255. So now I have a brightness value. If it is bounded, it will remain 0. If it is not bounded, it remains 0. If not bounded, if it has reached max iterations, it means it is bounded, and therefore it will be lit. Okay. Now I need to convert this back into pixel data. So now remember, we are converting a two-dimensional x and y coordinate into a single-dimensional into something that is single dimension, right? So each pixel would be its x into y into width, right? X plus y into width, right? And I can say plus, no, this will be into 4 or plus 4. Yeah, this will be into 4. Why is this into 4? Because remember, each pixel is represented by 4 array elements. All right. So do you want to make sense of this one in an Excel sheet and to how this works? All right. I'm going to give it a shot.
Right.
So let's see. I'll remove everything. All right. So let's say I have this.
Right.
I have this grid.
Right.
So this is on the x-axis and this is on the z-axis.
Y-axis.
Yeah, on the y-axis. So this is 0 and this is 1.
Right. Yeah.
Let's say I have this one.
Right.
If I have to convert this into, let's say, a single dimensional array,
Right.
or onto a single dimensional array number, it would be what would this be? Okay,
Right.
what would this be? We put the formula x.
Yeah.
Hold on, man, this actually needs to start with 0 here. No. Yeah, this would be 0, of course. This would be 1 2 3 4 19, but what would this be? We can ignore this one. Oh man, I think I messed up with the explanation, but let's say this starts with, no man, this needs to start. Okay, what would this be? This would be 20, 21. All right, let's make sense this way.
Okay.
You get it, right?
Right.
And then this would once again be 40.
Okay.
So each one of these elements would
Yes.
be this plus whatever whatever y we'll have the x value plus y value into the width. So if it was, let's say if I want to reference this one,
Yes.
it would be 0 1 2, it would be 2 plus whatever y value we have 2 into the width. Width over here is, what is the width here?
20.
What? Okay, hold on. Is it 20? Yeah, it is 20. So it would be so let's say if I have to do this,
Yes.
it would be x plus y, which is 2, into the width, which is,
Why is it y is 2?
y is it? Oh, it is 1.
Right.
It is 1. So this particular element would be 23.
Starts from,
Yeah.
0,
Yeah, it starts from 0 1 and
Right.
all of those things.
Right.
So this would be 23,
Correct.
right? So this would be element number 23
Yes.
in this double dimensional array.
Right.
That's what is happening.
So from x and y you got.
Yeah, x and y. Yeah, and then I'll have to multiply it by 4 because
Right.
each pixel is represented by 4 array
Correct.
elements. So now I have this one.
Yes.
So now I can say pixel of pixel data of px plus 0. Remember, the first element is red. So and red values are once again from 0 to 255 and all of
Right.
those things, right? Say 1, 2, and 3, and this would once again, I'll just say 255 because I want it to be the brightest.
Okay.
Alright, so now I have manipulated the pixel data according to this z square plus c formula that the Julia set determines,
Right.
and I have this one.
Okay.
All I have to do is set it back into the canvas context.
Mhm.
So this would be what? I mean, at the end of this iteration, yeah, I have this. Yeah. So at the end, hold on. So what is this? Yeah, at the end of the X and the Y loop. I'm sorry. I'll have to at the very end. I'll just say canvas context dot put image data
Right.
at 0, 0. You put the
Pixel.
image data, not the pixel data. The pixel data already belongs to the image data.
Got it.
Remember? So
Okay.
image data or data is pixel data.
Mm.
So basically, whenever you modify pixel data,
Mhm.
it modifies the data within
Image
image
data.
data, and then all I have to do is image data dot
Okay.
this one. All right. Now remember that the value of C and CY and CX are.
CY needs to be capitalized. I think that's.
Oh yes, yes. Let's
Yeah.
let's make sure that we have the same
Yeah,
thing
right.
everywhere. So we have CY, and all of those things. All right.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
Obviously, we have some errors. No.
Okay.
Oh yeah, of course. We'll have to call the
All
draw
the
set. We'll have to call the draw set from
Yeah.
over here. No console logging here. So I have
Right.
this one. All right. Hopefully. All right. Put image data. Parameter 1 is not of type image data. Oh right. Of course. It's not.
It's the other
It's
way
yeah.
around.
It's the other way around. It's image data, 0, 0. What is this?
What is that?
What is that?
Yeah. What is it?
Yeah, I showed this to you.
Oh.
Yes, remember the set. Remember the set demo that I had.
Right.
Look at that. When C is 0, what do you get?
Oh.
You get a circle. Basically, all of these items within the circle
Yes.
are belonging to that set.
Right.
Now let's look at the Wikipedia Julia sets.
Right.
All right. Once again, because the Wikipedia page actually lists some very beautiful patterns
Okay.
for specific values of
C.
C. Okay.
Right.
And so we'll just take those and we'll plug it into our
Correct.
function.
Yeah. Oh, what about that one? That first one.
No, that's actually a different function.
Oh.
That's a different function. I think it's
Z cube
z3
minus one.
z cube minus 1.
Wow.
All right. So look at this. All right. All right. So where f of c, c is equal to 1 minus the golden ratio.
Oh.
1 minus the golden ratio. Golden ratio would be 0.1. No, I think it's 1.61. Yeah. Yeah, it's 1.618.
Right.
You want to do this?
Yeah.
All right. So it's 1 minus 1.618. Now they don't specify whether it is this one. So I'm just going, yeah, it's 1 minus 1.618.
618. Okay.
Now let's see what happens.
Right.
It does produce that pattern.
Perfect.
It does. It does. Yeah. Hold on. It does produce that pattern.
Yes.
All right. Let's look at some more patterns.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Let's look
first,
at, yeah.
can we make those colors a little random?
Yes,
Because
colors.
everything is coming in white.
Yeah, it is coming in white. Now hold on.
Okay.
Now, maybe I can do it in red. Maybe you want me to do it in.
Because it's coming. Can we just take random values between 0 and 255?
We can. I mean,
Each time?
each time.
Yeah.
Holy hell, man! That will be a lot of computation. I mean, the only thing I'm worried about here is the
Oh.
computation. So that's 800,000 times where a random color needs to be generated.
No,
We'll get to
only
that.
when
We'll
you're putting the data, right? No.
yeah.
Okay.
We'll get to that. We'll just do a slight modification on what we have done,
Okay.
and then we'll see some different color variations. We will see. We will see. I'm not
Right.
saying that we won't.
Right.
All right. Let's look at the Julia set for
Okay.
when it's 0.4 and
0.6.
0.6. So 0.4 and 0.6. Oh wait, was it minus?
No, it's correct.
Sorry. No, it is minus 0.4. The minus is hidden here.
Minus 0.4
Yeah.
plus 0.6. Okay. Oh, this is beautiful.
Right? Look at these
Fantastic.
beautiful fractal patterns
Oh,
and
lovely.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah, lovely, right?
No, it's
Yeah,
still lovely.
yeah.
Right?
Okay, let's see. 0.285 and 0. What was that? 0.285 and 0. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and argue that the pattern is still over there.
Right.
It's just that you're not able to see it. This is what I actually wanted to show you.
Okay.
Now remember, in our code, what we have done, we have basically said
Either on.
either on or off.
Yes.
But what if I want to set the brightness
Yes.
to wherever this guy has stopped his iteration,
Okay.
right? Which means I don't have to
Let's
do
just
all
set
of
it
this.
equal to n.
No, because n can go up to so many values, right?
Okay.
So I'll just say where brightness is equal to, we'll use the map function. We'll map n to 0 comma, what is the max iteration, right? 0 comma max iteration, map it to a value of 0 comma 255.
Okay. Oh.
See that?
Wow.
Right?
How do we get these kind of secondary things?
Secondary things, exactly. So those are values of n.
Right.
So I mean, basically, so let's say this has broken out of the loop in, I mean, we do this bounds check.
Yes.
If it broke out of the loop in, let's say 16,
Yes.
after 16 steps,
Right.
then the brightness is from that 0 to 16. So it did initially go through that iteration for some steps before breaking out,
Got it.
right?
Yeah.
Which means it should be possible for us to check this bounds check. Let's say if I set it as 4,
Okay.
which means more and more colors would not come. Yeah, I mean, it's the exact opposite of what I was thinking. But yes, but I think that makes
Did you run
sense.
this?
Yeah, I ran. Yeah, I did run this. Let's say I set it at 26, some arbitrary value. So more and
these are
more,
giving
yeah,
shades.
more shades,
Yeah.
right? So I can, I am going to leave this at 16. But you can see how the shader thing
Right.
works, right? Yeah. I think another thing we can do is not set the green or not red. Let's just go with yellow. What's yellow? Yellow is red and green, right? So it's RGB. Yeah. So let's do this. That's a nice yellow coloring thing and all of those things happening. But ideally, what happens is these colors that you see are actually hue colors. So they convert this n value into its specific hue value.
Okay.
So a brightness into a hue. I mean, I'm not ready with that function, but maybe I can just plug it in and then I can create a supplementary for that. All right. Let's churn on. Let's do this.
This is what we did just.
No. We did this 0.285.
Oh, it's like
Where just slight difference, it creates a totally different pattern apparently. So let's just do this 0.1. All right. So it creates this very beautiful pattern. Is yellow okay or what do you want me to do? Is yellow okay or
You can try different.
okay? I'm gonna try red. See what happens. Yikes! It's a very scary red. Yeah, this will be cyan, I think. Yeah. Okay, cyan I think is better.
Okay.
All right. You see this, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically that's how. That's how Julia sets are created.
Right.
Now let's do one thing. Let's map our X and Y values to the mouse. I mean, let's capture the mouse input,
Oh.
and wherever we move the mouse,
Hmm.
right? I mean, it should generate the Julia set for that.
Okay.
All right.
Uh-huh.
No, I've actually
Now
I
shall we
did.
see some more?
You want to see some
Oh,
more?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that
Let's
one?
take this
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
take this one. I'm going to copy this because it
Ooh,
is
the
going.
next one is very nice.
And then
I. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. You okay with this color? You don't seem to be. No, nah. Which one? Which green?
Yeah, green will be.
All right.
No, this is a red, no?
Oh yeah, sorry. RGB.
See,
Right?
green shows those other.
I think so,
colours,
yes.
Yeah, more.
Yeah.
How brilliant this is! So cool.
Right.
Yeah. So there is a so why are those central points more No, they're bright.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's because they have gone through more number of
Exactly,
iterations.
right?
Yes,
Isn't it? Right.
they've gone through more number of iterations.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Somewhat like snowflakey.
Yeah.
That one was. What about that one?
This one
The
or
next one
the next one,
also?
0.8 and
Uh-huh.
156.
But like you said, they are doing something with the hue also. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there was negative point. I think that's we missed.
Oh yeah, negative 0.8. But still, nevertheless, we did get a pattern over there. I'm not sure if if it comes in the
Oh.
video. Wow.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So each one of these
Uh,
tiny structures over here
Exactly.
is actually a fractal of
which
the
is
overall.
same, right,
Yes,
right,
overall,
right, right.
overall this thing.
Yeah.
All right. Now the
Amazing.
only difference between this and the Mandelbrot set is that at the end of every calculation over here, z becomes c. Essentially, the value of c
Hmm.
is added back to z. Is added back to c. All right. Give me some time to think about it.
Sure.
But what I want to do right now is map the mouse
Yeah, that's what.
so that we don't have to keep on changing this and
Yes,
all of those
yes.
things. All right. So now that I have the canvas element, I can add the mouse to the canvas element, and in HTML and in JavaScript you can just say canvas element dot add event listener of mouse. Okay, so I'm going to capture 3 events: mouse down, mouse up, and then mouse move,
Okay.
because I want to change C only when I click
Press
and then
and then-
press and then yeah. So it's mouse down. Once again, it's a function. All right, this function will automatically have a parameter called event, and I'm just going to set a flag over here. Just say is down is equal to true. All right, the same thing for mouse up as well, and is down is false. But a different thing for mouse move, I have the event, and if I say if is down, I mean if the mouse is being pressed. But before we go anywhere, let's just declare this variable before you forget. Is down is false. All right. So now I have a way to track my mouse movements if the mouse is down. Let me just console log event dot. Is it page X or client X? I forget. I should have probably written this down, so I'm just going to say page X for now. Okay. All right. Hopefully this gives me, just going to do a console log, so I need to have the console open. So I do have the coordinates, but if you can see, the X value starts from 180 over here. So it's not, I mean, so basically I need to offset this as well. So I need to have, because we have an offset.
Right.
And this would not be 900. See, right now it's saying 810 because it's about 10 pixels away from the top. So I need a way for it to basically offset this. And I forget the offset function to do that. Just going to look it up real quick in one of my lookup documents here. What did I do? Is it C? Alright, just gonna look it up, and meanwhile you can just admire the beauty of the of the Julia set. All right, creates more and more complex patterns. Okay, for some. I really hate those silent. All right, where is it? Julia set. I hope nobody notices, man, that we have these silent gaps within our this thing. The page is taking a little bit time to load, but that's fine. I'm just going to look it up from my existing site. I think it's. I mean, I have this Julia set done and everything. I have the. Oh, great! I've used this bounding rect and all of those things. The bounding rect essentially, that's a jQuery function that gives you the exact bounding rect. All right. I'm just going to look it up in Google on Google. Okay. Yeah, I think it's just called parent offset. I mean, it's just called as an offset. Hold on.
Can't we just subtract that 180 or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can. I think we can. I think we can. I mean, for now, I mean, I think we can just do like a minus 180 and a minus 10 on both of these. Yeah, man. I think that's a very easier way to do it. Yes. So it is minus 180 and minus 10. Yeah, it says. Oh, right. I mean, I can't. JavaScript. That's the thing about JavaScript. Because you put a plus and minus at one place, it thinks the whole thing is a math function and it says, yeah. So right now, yes. So this is 0. I should never go to minus 1. And yeah, minus 1, and then this should be 1,000, 0, 1,000, 800. I think we're good. I think we're good. All right. So I can just say cx is equal to event dot page y minus 180 and cy, because I know the offset. But just keep in mind that if you are doing this on your own, there is a way for you to actually find the offset. All right. So I have this one. Now, once I have done the mouse move, I also need to refresh the screen. I mean, not refresh the screen, but draw the set. Right? So I have mouse move. So on mouse move, oh yeah, I need to say, do this only if the mouse is down. If is down, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, right. It can't be like this. C has to be a value between minus 2 and 2. Once again, map it back. Map this to 0, width to minus 2, 2. Map this to 0, height, minus 2, 2. Hey, hold on. We have these. We have the min C and the max C. We should be ideally using that, because I did have something to show you. Alright, so I have this one. Have I used this 2 and minus 2 elsewhere? Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Anywhere else I have? No, I don't think so. Alright, I think I'm good. Alright, let's see. Alright, and you can see the computer struggling to compute that, right? I mean, that's because there's so many pixels that need to be determined, and so many things that it needs to do before it evaluates that. One thing that you can help is by reducing the number of reducing the number of iterations. I've now reduced the iterations.
Oh, nice. Wow.
right? I mean,
it actually seems to show more.
to show more.
feature.
Yeah, that's because we break out too early. Essentially, we break out too early. But yes, the patterns are more clearly visible when you do this. I mean, the ideal thing to do would be to run this not on a browser, but on, let's say, something like Java that can process much better
Okay.
instead of
Got it.
this. I mean, that would be the ideal thing to do
Right,
over
right,
here.
right.
All right. So that's basically how
Can
Julius.
we, can we actually go through a loop and call draw set when changing?
Yes,
CX and
yes,
CY?
yes,
Yeah,
yes. We can.
see
I mean,
that.
that's what I have also.
Oh.
I mean, that's what I have also done. I mean, I mean, basically, I want to move on to the Mandelbrot set.
Yeah.
All right. So I have the
This
Julia
is
set
what
over
we have
here.
done. Right.
So I have a sine function executing in the background,
Yeah.
and it's just creating a sine wave between -2 and 2, and it just
Taking
sort.
the
I mean, if
values
you
from there.
yeah, and the reason why it is faster here than on this thing
So
is because
small.
this is a very smaller
Yes.
this thing. But essentially, it's the same thing that you saw over there.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how essentially Julia sets work. Now, the only difference between a Julia set and a Mandelbrot set is that in a Mandelbrot set, the C is added once again back to the value of Z. So let me just show that to you instead of just talking about it. All right. Okay. So I have this.
So apparently Z naught is 0, right? In a Mandelbrot set, and C varies.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So the only difference between
Yeah.
would be Cx is equal to Zx and Cy is equal to Zy.
Oh,
That's
okay.
it.
Okay.
All right. And I'm not going to be doing the mouse down
Right, right.
thing for now.
Right.
I'm just going to
Yeah.
do this. And this creates the Mandelbrot set.
Right.
All right.
Right.
That, in fact, is basically the only difference between the Julia set and the Mandelbrot set. Mandelbrot set essentially says that you take the Z value and then you add it back to the C value.
Okay.
Basically, the current C value becomes the previous
Yes.
Z value.
Right.
Yeah. So so the Z square plus C thing remains the same. It's
Right.
only how you treat it,
Yes.
right? It's
Yes.
only how you make sense of the function or how you want to treat the function.
Right.
Now the Mandelbrot set is so important because it creates all of these fractals. These fractals are instead themselves Mandelbrot sets.
Right.
Okay, you see these little bulbs over here that are
Correct.
going. Those are themselves Mandelbrot sets.
Right.
And if you zoom in enough on these will instead create their own Mandelbrot sets.
True.
All right. So yeah, so there is nothing happening over here. Let me take up the iteration to, let's say, 1,000 iterations. And if it exceeds 4, I'm just arbitrarily selecting 4.
Okay.
I know that it will never come back again. All right. If I do this, now it is a little bit more granular
Right, yes.
into what this is. I mean, you are able to see the Mandelbrot details in
Right.
much
Yeah.
much more
Correct.
greater detail. You're able to see it.
Yeah.
But each one of these bulbs by itself is a Mandelbrot set.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's it, man. I think one thing we can add over here is print out the value of C over here on the left hand side here and everything. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I think one question that comes up again and again is, what is the use of?
Yeah.
All right, let me just switch it back to us. That's Control 5.
Right.
What is the use of the Mandelbrot set? Where are you
Yeah,
using
yeah,
this?
yeah.
And I think you highlighted it to me that it's actually a very
I read somewhere that
Yeah.
coastlines are.
yeah, coastlines are essentially not Mandelbrot set,
Fractals.
but they are essentially fractals.
Right.
And so that's one use of them. There's no use per se.
Right.
But here's a very interesting thing that I read. You know how you play a video game
Yeah.
and all of a sudden if you start finding a lot of weapons, medical packs,
Right.
and all of those
Ah,
things in a game,
okay.
you know you're getting somewhere close, an enemy is going to come or you're going to have a big challenge. Right? That's what this is.
Oh.
That function Z square plus C is so old. It's older than the Mandelbrot set itself, right? And it's actually a surprise that we did not see this entire thing graphically, before the 1970s. the implication of this function,
Right.
that is. So it looks like we are getting closer to something, closer to understanding the structure of our universe, or closer to understanding math, or some universal truth.
Right.
So
So
that's what the Mandelbrot set is to a lot of people. Yes, there are coastlines and fractal patterns that you can generate. If you're playing video games, for example, those trees and everything that you see, they are in fact fractally generated, right? I mean, it's the same overall shape that is reproduced again and again in a fractal manner. All right. So those are practical uses.
Right.
But other than that, philosophically speaking, what is the use of a Mandelbrot set? It just seems that we have gotten closer to we are getting close to an answer. All right. Yeah.
I remember trying to read this book called Gödel Escher-Bach,
Okay.
where he talks about self-similarity,
Right.
right? Even in music
Mm.
and even in Escher's paintings, there is a lot of self-similarity, and this is predominantly self-similarity.
Similarity. Yeah, this is predominantly self-similarity. Yes. Arising out of, once again, a very simple function. Z square plus C. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
But even, for example, we saw that Z cube plus C
Also gives
some kind of
yeah.
interesting patterns.
Yeah.
Right.
We leave it up to the viewers. I mean, if you want, you can actually plug that in Z cube plus C
Yes.
into your function,
Implementation.
in your implementation, and see what patterns come out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think we just seen the. I mean, we have seen both the Julia set and the Mandelbrot set. Yeah.
Very nice.
Very nice, right? Hey, hold on. Before we move on, I mean, I just wanted to show you what happens if you.
Yeah.
So let's say I make this 1.5 and 1.5. It'll appear a little bit zoomed in. It appears. It appears a little bit zoomed in, and that's actually the secret of zooming in into a Mandelbrot. Whenever you're looking for Mandelbrot, people actually want to see what's in the smallest thing.
Right.
So basically, you will have to manipulate that minimum C and the maximum C into, and then smaller and smaller. But you'll also have to do more and more iterations, because only those iterations are the ones that bring out details.
Very small. How about we go like really 0.5? Minus 0.5 and
Minus 0.5 and 0.5.
Okay.
So what happens is it'll zoom in like this. So I suspect you'll only see green.
Too big.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll only see.
Very small.
These are very small. But then look at this. You have seen a Mandelbrot set revealed over here. Over here. On these so many bulbs and all of those things. Each one of them. Yeah. That's what it does. You know what? This is weird. It looks weird. I'm just gonna. It doesn't make for a good visual actually. But
so there are some points which are sort of, but those points will also be themselves.
Be Mandelbrot sets.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. And there are many online tools for zooming into those structures, and those themselves would be Mandelbrot sets. Yeah. Yeah. That would be a Mandelbrot set. That would be a Mandelbrot. Yeah. So every one of them would be themselves. And there is a symmetry, there is this symmetry that happens, there is a X symmetry that happens. Yes. Right. So where this is the same as this.
Right.
All of those things. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is symmetric around X, but
not on Y. Not on Y. It is symmetric around X. Yeah. So to summarize, the Mandelbrot set, even though it doesn't have any apparent uses in the real world, it's akin to you playing a video game and all of a sudden finding a lot of stuff within the video game that will assist you overcome a challenge, right? If you, for example, I mean, if you're playing Wolfenstein, you're going to find a lot of guns and ammos and bullets and medical packs and all of those things. It 100% means you're going to meet some big enemy, right? I mean, there's no enemy involved over here, but us finding this structure hidden, such a beautiful fractal pattern hidden in such a simple function, reveals that we are getting closer to some truth. What truth that is, I'm not sure what that is. Or minds greater than mine probably know what it is, but not me right now. Is what I would say. Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's about it. So, yeah, that's all I had to show, Ravi. Let's do next week. So next week, I wanted to take a, let's say, a right turn, a detour, and I wanted to extract our country's election data onto, let's say, an Excel file. I mean, the Election Commission doesn't actually publish all of this into a nice, readable Excel file or a CSV file. All that election results that we see, we don't actually see them in Excel. It's just on a website which you'll have to go through, constituency by constituency, which is a little bit cumbersome, I would say. So what I want to do next week is write a Python program to go to the Election Commission website and extract all of this data and put it into an Excel file. Yeah. That's it, man.
That sounds interesting.
Maybe
we can do that. Can we do that for the US election site as well?
So I'm not sure where they publish their election data. I've never bothered to find out. But yes, but you know what? Their IT infrastructure happens to be just so big that they might actually have these kind of raw data to be, downloadable raw data somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. Right.
Yeah. But not for us, so we'll just build it. Yeah. Who knows, man? We'll just tweet the Election Commission officials, I guess, and then we'll just tell them, hey, we have the Excel data if you're interested in hosting on your site or something like that. All right, that's about it. I didn't have anything else.
Thank you.
Short and sweet. This was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
All right.